Hello there, students! So, the Pyro update is finally here, alongside a new set of interesting and unique Pyro weapons. And a banana. I mean, that's fine. I'm fine with a literally half-assed sandwich. Oh god. But I know many people out there will want to know one thing: how the thermal thruster operates, and how the rest of the Pyro's weapons operate, such as the Dragon's Fury and the new Airblast mechanics. As with the previous video, there's also a timestamp in the description and a Google Docs file. However, I am going to cover every single command that came from this update, literally every single one. But let's get to the commands later. We're covering the technical parts of the weapons first, so let's start with the most unique weapon so far, the Thermal Thruster. Alright, first of all, I'm going to check how the speed is applied to the user. Now, interestingly enough, it says here that it launches a Pyro in their aimed direction, so this isn't like a scout thing that we're talking about here. I recorded the Thermal Thruster being used in slow motion. If you watch the video closely, you can see the velocity value for every stage of the boost. So it looks like the speed boosts are fixed, instantaneous bursts of velocity. The first boost moves a Pyro vertically with a velocity of 350 hammer units per second, and then a second later sends the Pyro in the direction that they're aiming by 900 hammer units per second. However, you're probably wanting to know how far you can go with this in terms of horizontal movement, right? Well, whilst aiming at a perfect 45-degree angle on the track, I can reach a whopping 1,420 hammer units in distance, also including the initial jump before activating the thermal thruster. Now, as I said in the last video, the 2-fort bridge width is about 900 hammer units long, hence the thermal thruster is 1.57 recurring times longer than the bridge, which, as I hardly need to tell you, is quite a stretch. But what say we fire up the old test track for vertical movement too, eh? Let's take a look at the height. I used the jetpack at the peak of my jump whilst looking up to see how high it would carry me. As you can see here by the tests, the Pyro goes up by... oh. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologise for that legitimately unexpected issue. I have taken the liberty of extending the wall's height. As we can see here from the test, the Pyro goes up by— god damn it, how the fuck? The Pyro goes up by an astonishing 750 hammer units. Now, that's pretty high, even higher than I initially expected. However, it's not all about going straight up, so let's rewind a bit and take a look at the earlier horizontal jump. The peak of the 45-degree angle jump I did earlier is 417 hammer units high. But this wouldn't be a measurement without reference and comparison values. The peak of the bridge on 2-fort is 276.8 hammer units high, whilst the height of the sides of the bridge on 2-fort is approximately 180 hammer units high, and the height of the average container prop that you see in most industrial maps is 149.3 hammer units, and the Scout's double jump height without a winger would be about 148 hammer units. The Pyro's height herself, whilst in the default T-pose, is 85.7 hammer units. But here's an interesting thought: were there any variables for this? Usually for variables I take a look on the list of the Valve developer wiki, but I created this list now so I could get this done as soon as possible. I created a CVAR list from before and after the update, including locked commands. Compared the two, I found quite a list, but we're going to save that for the end of the video. Just so you know, there are no thermal thruster commands, so I will not be covering those. Alright, next up, the Dragon's Fury. From a technical standpoint, this one is pretty interesting. Whilst all Team Fortress 2 weapons derive their attributes from an item script file, as you can see here, the Dragon's Fury barely does that. The only real attributes that are used by the Dragon's Fury are the ammo, the Airblast, and the recharge meter's base rate and the type. So what's all this then? Well, these are only visual attributes. Changing these doesn't matter, all it does is display its text. But if that's the case, then take a guess as to what controls it. Yep, you guessed it, commands. This time I've got a whole set of commands for the Dragon's Fury Fireball attributes. Before I move on to those, I wanted to take a look at the default numbers. In terms of the Fireball itself, it travels at an alarmingly high 3000 hammer units per second. The The fireball dissipates after travelling 500 hammer units, so it basically vanishes a sixth of a second after being fired. The radius of the fireball is 30 hammer units. In terms of damage, every time you burn an enemy with the Dragon's Fury, they burn for 2 seconds, and this value stacks up to a maximum of 8 seconds, whilst the main damage is locked at 25. The damage value is affected by ramps and distance. Attacking an enemy that is on fire multiplies this by 3, so you're essentially dealing 75 damage against burning enemies. It fires about once every second, and if the previous fireball hits someone, the reload time is effectively divided by 1.5. However, if the user airblasts, that essentially doubles the firing rate between the airblast and the next fireball shot. Alright, these are the commands. Let's get started. TF Fireball Airblast Recharge Penalty is a command that sets the firing rate penalty that players incur as a result of airblasts. TF Fireball Burn Duration clearly sets the afterburn duration from Dragon's Fury projectiles. TF Fireball Burning Bonus sets the damage bonus against already burning enemies. TF Fireball Damage sets the base damage of fireballs. TF Fireball Distance sets the maximum possible distance for fireballs to travel. TF Fireball Draw Debug Radius shows a visual representation of fireballs, showing their radius. TF Fireball Hit Recharge Boost sets how much your reload time will be reduced by consecutive hits. TF Fireball Radius sets the radius for fireballs. This radius persists throughout the entire fireball's duration, as you can see here with the debug command. TF Fireball Speed sets the projectile speed for fireballs. Of course, this is measured in hammer units per second. An interesting thing about the projectiles that you probably already noticed is their inconsistency. Since these commands weren't really meant to be changed, the particles don't always change with the commands. Now, let's explain the Pyro's main mechanics, starting with the Airblast. Now, the Pyro's Airblast is an interesting topic. The new system changes it so the airblasts aren't entirely static. It takes a lot more factors into consideration when measuring the airblast distance. In a moment we're going to take a look at the airblast commands, but not before we take a look at the debug option. Here we can see what factors go into the airblasts. Let's take a moment to slowly analyse this. There's a small arrow that points out the player's aim for the airblast. This obviously shows what direction the player was aiming in at the time of the airblast. The long grey arrow shows the expected result speed from the airblast. The long white arrow shows the actual impulse applied to the target. Impulse is basically the force of the airblast. There's more to it than that, but I'll save that for the professors to explain to you. Oh wait. The blue arrow represents the coefficient of reflection. Before I continue, I just want to say that reflection does not equal airblast power. Reflection is how much the target's movement is pushed back when they're running towards you, whilst airblast power is just general pushback. The purple and yellow arrows both represent airblasting against surfaces. As mentioned in the update notes, the airblast can bounce against surfaces, and these arrows are only shown when airblasting against the ground. The red and green arrows both represent what speed they were running towards you at, and what force they were reflected with. And at the end of it, the minimum upwards airblast velocity is changed to meet a certain threshold. This is only done when the vertical airblast resulting power is beneath 100, and I will explain that later. In addition, these two aren't determined by attributes. Instead, they're determined by quite a lot of commands. Let's get started then. All of these commands have the TF Airblast Cray prefix. I'm not exactly sure what Cray means, but you know. TF Airblast Cray determines if the server uses a new airblast logic from the Jungle Inferno update. Setting this to 0 means that the old airblast logic is applied instead. TF Airblast Cray Debug. I already mentioned that earlier, but this command allows you to see every single thing that goes into airblast calculations. TF Airblast Cray Ground Min Z sets the minimum value of the Z velocity of the target. This one, however, warrants further explanation. So what this means is that no matter what position the target is airblasted from, they will always go up by this value, which is the Z velocity. As I mentioned earlier, Z is the up and down axes. So, for example, say if I was to airblast a medic, they would go up by 100 hammer units per second as a minimum, no matter what angle they're airblasted from. TF Airblast Cray Ground Reflect is well, record the day 3 page. It says that aiming an airblast at players' feet no longer misses. That's what this command is for. It decides if the airblast reflects off the ground or not. TF Airblast Cray lose footing duration is for how long airblast victims will lose their footing after being airblasted, as targets that are airblasted both lose their air control and their footing. However, this value is separate from the air control loss. I will explain that later. TF Airblast Cray pitch control allows the airblast user to control the angle of the airblast. So instead of airblast repelling the target away from the airblast source in a cone direction, they are pushed towards the centre of the airblast instead. Let me try to make that clearer. So say you have a pyro and that same poor medic from earlier. When this variable is set to 0, the target is pushed outwards from the airblast source. But when it's set to 1, the target is pushed inwards towards the player's aimed direction. TF Airblast Cray Power is one I had an absolute blast with. Seriously, mess around with this one all you want, it's amazing. I'm not even joking. This isn't even a part of the script, I'm just saying this is so good. This value does exactly what it says on the tin. It sets the general power of airblasts. TF Airblast Cray Power Relative takes into account the player's movement when airblasting. For example, if the player is running fast towards their target, they will be launched further by airblasts. TF Airblast Cray Reflect Coefficient, or COEF for short, is the coefficient effect of airblasts. Setting this to 0 means that it will simply stop all incoming targets. Setting it to 1 means that it will push back with their exact velocity. Setting it to 2 and higher means that it will amplify their approaching velocity and push it away from them. Before I move on to the next 2 commands, I need to explain the stun system. Many people have probably noticed this new icon, but it most likely confused players as to what exactly it meant. Well, this icon represents the stun status effect. Stunning is where the player's movement speed is crippled or stopped entirely. This is brought on by many things, including the Sandman's new stun system and the Natasha. Interestingly, however, it seems like this system was meant to apply to the new Airblast system, but this was scrapped and disabled for unknown reasons. These 2 commands both relate to this disabled mechanic. TF Airblast Cray Stun Amount is how much the target's movement speed is reduced after being airblasted. This can only be from 0 to 1, 0 meaning no movement speed loss, and 1 meaning that the player loses all movement. TF Airblast Cray Stun Duration is how long players will lose movement speed for in seconds. This can only be set from 0 to 1. This value does not stack, nor does it reset, so consecutive airblasts do not stack or reset the stun. And to finish with the pyro section, the pyro's new fire system. As for how it works, the flamethrower hit detection has been improved significantly to match the actual particles. One of the noticeable changes is that fire no longer stops when hitting a wall or a surface. If I had a chance to actually test it out in game, I would have found out exactly how it's changed, but I'm not Sigsegev. I'm not even worthy to say his name. So let's just take a look as to what we can make out so far. This system also seems to be more dynamic, as there were many new attributes for it. I could go through them all, but this is mostly for advanced server owners who probably want to make their own weapons or man vs machine robots. Hence, the new flamethrower attributes, alongside all the other attributes that came from this update, are all located in the Google Docs file in the description. Now then, let's start moving on to the miscellaneous commands. All the commands that don't really have much of a relevance to pyro weapons. Before I start, just know that this is a massively large list, far greater than the bumper cars video. I'm going to be doing them in alphabetical order only, so prepare yourselves, this contains a lot of trivial commands. No, you think I'm joking, I'm actually not. I'm going to go through every single useless command in this update, so you can just turn back now if you want, or you can look at the timestamps in the description to go to the next part, because everything from this point onwards is not really stuff that you need to know. It's just for those curious people out there, really. Plus help me is actually the medic shout. This was applied so you can bind it to a key or a button. Limited capture workaround says that it enforces workaround limitations on mouse capture in some environments. At least that's what the description says. I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of this one is. Say party is obvious. It functions similar to the say command, which we'll post in the chat. Say party posts to your current party instead. Reload character info, which is stylized as reload chart info, apparently reloads the character info panel, which I assume is a list of statistics. I'm not exactly sure what this one does. Set party contract progress enabled allows you to set if party members can progress on contracts whilst playing with you. Show quest log is a changed command. It now opens up the map panel instead of the contracts drawer. SV voice codec has also changed. It now accepts the input V audio celt high. TF bison tick time is rather unique. It sets the tick time for righteous bison damage. As mentioned in the update, the righteous bison was reverted to its original design, so this command allows users to freely set the tick time for damage. I was able to get to demonstration for the bison command. I lined up a bunch of heavies and shot down the line. The lighter videos are the ones that are currently being played, so listen up for the hit sounds. Yeah, sort of screwed that last one up a bit there. Anyway, this is defaulted at 1 tick every 0.025 seconds and does 20 damage per tick. Whilst I did find the tick time rather shocking, it's not that special, since at the second and third tick, targets are usually pushed out of the way, and the projectile usually goes really fast. I did screw up on the 0 demonstration, since it's hard to record that thing from another angle. However, I would like to confirm that 0 basically deals damage at every single frame. TF bot use preset roster says that it forces bots to choose classes based off a preset class table. I'm not exactly sure what this means. TF chat pop-up hold time is how long party messages will be shown to the party UI before fading out entirely. TF find a match hint viewed stores if the player has seen the ready to play dialog box. TF item inspect auto spin says if weapons will automatically spin in the weapon inspector. TF item inspect auto rate says how fast weapons will spin in the weapon inspector when automatic spinning is enabled. TF list rounds lists the rounds for the current map, starting from whichever round the map is currently set to. This was mostly intended for the purpose of map debugging. TF play round forces the map onto the round that the user specifies. This can be used along TF list rounds for map debugging. TF dashboard slide panel step is a rather interesting command that lets you change how far away the matchmaking panels are away from each other. On the video you can see exactly what it looks like when it's set to 276, which is actually pretty neat. TF party client debug allows the player to debug their current party information. Now, we got a couple of related commands here. These ones are pretty interesting. It refers to an air current, which I believe refers to an airblast. TF movement air current air control mult sets the multiplier for air control when the player is inside an air current, more specifically when they are air blasted. The lower this value is, the lower the air control when players have been air blasted. TF movement air current friction mult sets the multiplier for friction when the player is inside an air current. TF movement lost footing friction is a multiplier for ground friction for players that have lost their footing. The effects of footing loss were demonstrated earlier. The lower the value, the lower the friction. TF movement lost footing restick is hard to explain. If players are moving slower than this speed after being air blasted, they can regain their footing faster. If this is set to a value like 0, the player will be unable to regain their footing early, and will only move normally when the footing loss timer expires. TF notifications push bottom, if enabled, slide your chat messages in the UI from the bottom part of the UI instead of the top. TF party chat is the same as say party, except you will see what you say in the UI as a notification. TF Party Debug displays a lot of information on your current party's matchmaking status. TF Party Ignore Invites allows players to ignore party invites if set. TF Party Incoming Invites Debug shows the current party invites. Yeah, I don't exactly get it either. TF Party Invite User is a Steam ID based command. All you need to do is type in the Steam ID of the person you want to join, and the game will attempt to invite them. TF Party Join Request mode sets how players joining your party will work. 0 means that any friend can join in at any time. 1 means that they need to request to join your party. 2 means that they need to be invited in order to join. TF Party Keep on Same Team apparently keeps players in the same party on the same team, but this feature hasn't been properly implemented yet. TF Party Leave only leaves the current party. That's literally it. Again, most of these commands are useless. TF Quest Map Intro Viewed stores if the player has seen the introduction for the contractor. TF Quest Map Tuner Wobble Magnitude is... well, I don't know why this one exists at all, but it changes how much the tuner bar at the bottom wobbles when idle. It's a bit pointless. TF Warpaint Explanation Viewed is the last one that was added. This one is used to store if the user has seen the explanation for Warpaints. So, to conclude that incredibly long list of commands, the Jungle Inferno update is packed with content, filled to the very brim. So many beautiful things to mess around with, so many new weapons, all of these interesting things that came from the Jungle Inferno update. I haven't even scratched the surface! I also cover a couple more things in the Google Docs file mentioned below. With that said, goodbye for now, and class dismissed! Now, if you excuse me, I have so many contracts lying around. Let's see. Get 5 kills in a single life with the shotgun. Are you f***ing Thank you for watching. Be sure to join my Discord server to keep up to date on everything and speak with me and many other friendly folk. Special thanks to Archer Hero for assisting with the tests. It was very difficult to record most of the demonstrations without her help, and it made it very easy to record. I'd also like to thank the Hype Train passengers for their participation in the video, including Scrap, Mr. Muffin, Dank Pretzel, Green Beast, Montana the Spy, Archer Hero, Trino, Noah, Jade, Pick Manipulator, Iron Bash, Hair Plague Doctor. You all made this very pleasant to do, and at least I can get this video squared away. Tell me what you thought of this video, criticism is always welcome. And as usual, a Source Shenanigans update is on the way to explain future plans. Professor Heavy, out.